In case you did not get the memo, all 3 podcasts that I do per week will be centralized to this YouTube channel, or if you've been listening to the audio podcast, they will be both on SoundCloud or iTunes. Simply put, however it is that you've been digesting this content, however it is that you're digesting this content right now, specifically, it will be here 3 times a week. I'm super, super excited about that. This particular podcast, we are going to preview Sunday's game, the Vikings hosting the Raiders at US Bank Stadium. And coming into the season, so before the season even started, when I did my early record prediction, I marked this game down as an automatic, no-holds-barred win for the Vikings, and here's why. Specifically against for several reasons, but specifically against the Raiders, you're talking about 2+ decades of being a dysfunctional franchise up to this point, clumsy roster management by Mike Mayock, Derek Carr trying to find his superpowers from his 2 or 3 years ago MVP form, and the whole Antonio Brown saga. I just said there's no way that they're going to recover from all this. They're a whole ass mess of a team. Of course the Vikings are going to win. Gotta tell you, folks, after watching the first 2 games of the Raiders season, they're not a bad team. They're really, really not. And they're not going to be contenders. They may not necessarily even make the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. With that said, if nothing else, they're going to be a tough ass out for damn near everybody that they play. They started their season off with a victory against the Denver Broncos before losing to the Kansas City Chiefs. And that loss against the Chiefs, I'm going to take with a grain of salt, because unless you're the New England Patriots, or unless you're specifically the LA Rams, if you are unable to go toe for toe with the Kansas City Chiefs as an high octane offense for high octane offense, the Kansas City Chiefs, they'll make you look silly 100% of the time, because they force you to play their style of football. And if it's not in your team's makeup, you're going to end up looking foolish. So even with that, the Raiders started the game off with a 10-0 lead before the Chiefs responded with 28 unanswered points by 4 touchdown passes, all of at least 25 yards or more a pop. That's crazy. But they start off with a 10-0 lead, and then Derek Carr is just not in his game to go toe-for-toe with Patrick Mahomes. And I think that's when things started to get unraveled there. Now, with that said, all things considered, the Oakland Raiders, let's start with their offense. They have a very, very impressive offensive line. I'm talking about they're nasty, they're physical, but they also have really, really good technique. It's incredible. Derek Carr has some of the most consistent, clean pockets to work with, and their run blocking is just as good, and that's without Richie Incognito, who is now presumably going to make his season debut after serving a 2-game suspension. I'll put it to you like this. I like the improvements of the Vikings offensive line, but I've always said when it comes to, if you're in the NFC North division, or if you're looking on a broader scale, the NFC conference as a whole, when you're going up against nasty front sevens such as the Chicago Bears or the Philadelphia Eagles, you need an offensive line that has good technique but also is nasty to be able to punch them back and say, you're not just going to be able to just manhandle us and get to our quarterback and get to our running back. And the Oakland Raiders offensive line, so far, it's early in the season. We're only 2 weeks in, going into week 3. Anything can happen. I get that. But so far, they have the perfect blueprint to be able to go up against those nasty defensive fronts. They have already, so early, it's early right now, they have one of the best offensive lines in the league, and it's not even close. Then when you look at their running game, just like the Vikings are committed to Dalvin Cook in the run game, the Raiders are doing the same thing. Josh Jacobs is starting his rookie campaign off to a very, very strong start, averaging 5.3 yards per carry. So that's really, really impressive. And where I'm getting that, how that compares to the Vikings have one of the best defensive lines in the league. I don't think they haven't seen an offensive line like this, I feel. I don't think they have. The Packers' offensive line is really nice. I don't think they've seen anything like this Oakland Raiders team. Again, they're nasty as hell. They're physical. They're ready to fight. They're ready to throw some bows, if you know what I'm saying. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they struggle. Our defensive line and our front seven, for that matter, when it comes to going after Derek Carr and when it comes to trying to take down the run game of Josh Jacobs. So I wouldn't be surprised if they struggle a little bit. Then when you get to Derek Carr, he looks significantly better than what I thought he would. Take aside, yes, when he was going up against Patrick Mahomes after that 10-0 start that they had, 10-0 lead, where he's trying to go toe-for-toe with them and things unraveled. Take that aside. When you consider the 10-0 start and the whole last Denver Broncos game, Derek Carr, he looks calm, he looks poised, and they do a good job. The passing attack, they do a good balance of, one, getting rid of the ball quickly, so quick passes. So if you're Mike Zimmer, in the last 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of the season, you've been having your cornerbacks play consistent off coverage, 5, 6, 7 yards off their assignments, the Oakland Raiders, they're going to eat that for lunch all day long. But they also combine the quick passing game with longer developing pass patterns. So you got to be careful of that. And if the defensive front of the Vikings is to struggle, then this is really going to call on the cornerbacks of the Minnesota Vikings to really, really step up. I think they've been the beneficiary of a very, very ferocious defensive line that's been getting pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and the week before that, Matt Ryan, but you may not necessarily see that against Derek Carr. He's been having clean pockets for the majority of these two games. And really, you only have two receiving weapons on the Raiders to worry about. Number one, Tyrell Williams, who I would put him in that tier with a Marvin Jones or even a Golden Tate, to where they may not necessarily be DeAndre Hopkins. He may not necessarily be a Keenan Allen or an Adam Thielen, but he's a damn good player, Tyrell Williams is. And also their tight end, Darren Waller. Those are the only two legitimate weapons that you have to worry about. So if you can shut them down or give them problems, you give yourselves a chance, even if the defensive line is to struggle alongside of that. So the cornerbacks, you're going to have to step up. Just how I said how the Raiders' offensive line is nasty, they're physical, the front seven of the Raiders is equal to that. And I completely forgot that they have Vontaze Burfict on that team. I think he should be banned from the league because he's a dirty player. He really, really is. All that aside, when he's not being dirty, he's a physical-ass linebacker. So our offensive line and their run defense is one of the best in the league so far through the first two games of the season. They are the fifth team, or the fifth best defense in yards allowed per game at 57.5 rushing yards per game. Their secondary is where you can really, really attack them. So when you get back to their run defense against the Chiefs, they've got Shady McCoy, they've got Damian Williams. They held them against the Chiefs last week to 1.4 yards per carry. So their run defense is really good. So if Dalvin Cook and the run game is to struggle, this brings on the theme of the game where Kirk Cousins, you need to put up or shut up. Just freaking play. You may get called upon to make plays in the passing game because their secondary is nothing to raise hell about. Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, get them involved. Stephon Diggs, you need to catch the damn ball when you're wide open. But these tight ends, I feel like I haven't heard Kyle Rudolph or Irv Smith Jr.'s name enough. I haven't heard that. You're running all these 12 formations, two tight end set formations, then get them involved. So it's time for Kirk Cousins. He may be called upon to make plays. All these brain farts and blunders that you have where you're playing but your mind isn't there, you cannot get away with that, because otherwise, if you do have those same mistakes, we're looking at the Buffalo Bills all over again in 2018. If you're a Vikings fan, and I know it's any given Sunday, but if you're a Vikings fan and you're saying, you know what, this will be a good scrimmage game for the Vikings to get back on track. These are the Raiders. What are we talking about? You are sadly mistaken. With that said, I think the Vikings will win this game, but it's going to be tough. I think they'll win. I'll give a final score of 21-17 Vikings. I think they will win this game. It's going to be tough. They got to step up. So, actually, one more thing. Let's look at their injury report. So I named those list of players: Josh Jacobs, Tyrell Williams, Darren Waller, Vontaze Burfict, among others, of which you need to be wary or you need to be alert when it comes to those guys. Now, on their injury report right now, Trent Brown being out could hurt their offensive line. So that's something where it could be advantage Vikings. And then also, who else we got? Also, Tyrell Williams and Josh Jacobs are both dealing with hip injuries right now. And Vontaze Burfict is dealing with a shoulder and a knee injury right now. So those key players may be out or questionable, or they may be limited. So it could give the advantage to the Vikings. But I tell you what, I want the Raiders to be fully healthy. It is time for Kirk Cousins to overcome some damn adversity. You need to step up, because I don't want him to have this false sense of security with a banged up Raiders team and we win and oh my God, I'm so bad. And then the next game, week 4 against the Chicago Bears, they punch you in the mouth. He needs to overcome some adversity so that way he can truly feel confident. It could only help him if he goes up and overcomes a really, really good physical team. So that way maybe he can get some real confidence instead of getting up on the podium and sounding like, yes, I figured it out. No, you haven't. You need to freaking play. We do this 3 times a week. Mediocre at Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. Check me out on Twitter at realistic_Randy, Facebook at Realistic Randy. Enjoy the game, folks.